Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Michael Reedy. I am the Senior Vice President of Ad Sales here at NBC Universal, and I have the great pleasure of being the moderator for today's webinar and today's panel. The webinar on the impact of intrinsic in-game advertising and the impact it has on helping marketers understand their in-game success. A quick background on myself. I've spent the majority of my career on the streaming side of the ad-supported business, working here at NBC Universal. And I'm particularly excited for this panel because I see a lot of similarities of where the streaming industry was about 10 years ago and where gaming is in terms of a medium or an advertising channel. And what I mean by that, about 10 years ago in ad-supported streaming, we had this acceleration and sizable growth in the audience of people watching video over the internet. And whether that was long form movies, TV shows, or short form clips, specific digital shorts, there was this huge consumption happening of content and therefore opportunity for marketers to reach that audience. But there was a lack of standards. And one of the conversations that we are having, and again, 10 years ago, was around viewability. We had these new environments, these new experiences, and how can marketers have the confidence that their ads truly were being seen? And we partnered with industry trade bodies like the IAB and measurement partners like IAS, Oracle Moat on this exact topic. And here we are, 10 years later, talking about gaming as a medium. And those same two things are relevant, the audience. It's estimated that about 3 billion people worldwide are playing video games. Here in the US specifically, it's estimated about 227 million, half of which are women. And I'm using my words specifically on people playing video games as opposed to saying gamers. Because I think when we say gamer, we all have this image and stereotype of the young male playing in his bedroom on a console. And while that is a big cohort of gameplay, because of the diversity of available games, because of the diversity of platforms that they're available on, in addition to console, desktop, mobile, you therefore have diversity of audiences. And I think that is the opportunity for marketers to start thinking of these audiences as potential consumers of their products, their services, their brands. And so that's number one. And then the number two is the standards. We have had standards in in-game advertising. They're quite dated, and we will get into that in a little bit. But similarly, you have a changing environment, especially in certain games where you are going from 2D to 3D environments. The need for updated standards so that marketers can feel confident entering into gaming as a medium or an advertising channel is more important than ever before. And thanks to the great work of companies like Anzu, with their patented technology that helps the industry track ad viewability in these 3D environments, a lot of progress has been made. And just a quick aside, I'm very familiar with the Anzu technology, as NBC Universal does have a strategic partnership from an ad sales standpoint with Anzu, both here in the US and here in the UK. So again, I'm very excited for this panel to have this discussion. And with that, I'm actually going to introduce Ben Fenster, who is the co-founder and chief product officer of Anzu, who's going to share a brief presentation on the capabilities and the guidelines that they've made in intrinsic in-game ad standards. Ben, I'm going to turn it over to you.
So, hey everyone, my name is Ben Fenster. I'm a co-founder and chief product at Anzu. And today I want to tell you more about the new intrinsic in-game measurement standard we've been working on together with the IAB and MRC that was released on October. Let's move to the next slide, please. So what's the most important changes that happened between this new standard and the old standard from 2009? So as you can understand, a lot of things have changed around gaming and around digital ad measurement in general, which affected the new standard. And the major changes are the separation between impression and viewable impression, as the old standard just counted impressions as viewable impression, did not create any distinction between them. Re-examining and eliminating the 10-second cumulative exposure that was the requirement for counting an impression in the old standard, and now move to a more well-known and aligned standard, which aligns perfectly with the new MRC digital ad measurement guidelines for both display and video, and we'll tell you more about it later on. Also incorporating new advertising formats. A lot have happened since 2009, so a lot of new ad formats have been included in the new standard. And of course, the definitions, aligning the definitions to all the other MRC and IAB guidelines around measurement, which have been very, very helpful in helping a brand advertiser compare apple to apple between impression, viewable impression on both of standard 2D ad formats and the new 3D intrinsic ad formats. Can we move to the next slide, please? So when looking at the new viewable impression standards, there are 4 main points to cover. One is the move from cumulative to consecutive ad exposure time, exactly like in standard digital ad measurement. So 1 consecutive second for display ads and 2 consecutive seconds for video ads. Now, during this consecutive time, 3 conditions must be met. One is the ad angle in relation to the user screen must be between 0 to 55-degree angle. The ad occlusion, meaning the blocked part of the ad, must be below 50%, and the minimal screen real estate percentage taken by the ad, meaning the ad must cover at least 1.5% of the screen. Now, let's see how it looks like in an actual 3D environment. The next slide, please. So the first thing we're going to demonstrate is how does a viewable and non-viewable ad look like in terms of the minimum ad size. Next slide. So here you can see an example of a viewable ad that takes 6.71% of the screen. Let's go to the next screen. Now you can see an example of a non-viewable ad taking only 1% of the screen. Keep in mind that the standard requires at least 1.5%, and that another fun fact that actually from our data measuring billions of ads in multiple environments, we actually see that the real average of this number is actually closer to 4.5 or 5%. Let's go to the next threshold. The next threshold is the ad angle in relation to the screen. So as we mentioned, it must be between 0 to 55 degrees. Now, 0 means the ad is a perfect rectangle in front of the screen. 90 degrees will mean you're only seeing a thin stripe of the side of the ad, and 180% degrees means the ad is completely backwards to you, seeing the back of the billboards showing the ad, for instance. Now, let's see how it looks like. Let's go to the next slide. Yes. So here you can see an example of a viewable ad with a 24.75% degree angle. So as you can see, it's perfectly viewable. Let's go to the next one. Here you can see an example of a non-viewable ad with 69.63 degree angle, in which although you can identify what's seen, we can all agree it's in a far lower quality than the previous one. And I guess this is something where in-game over-delivers and ensures that you always get a bit more than what expected, and that's always a great thing to help build trust when measuring a new ad format. Let's go to the next slide, please. The last threshold is the ad occlusion, meaning the blocked part of the ad. So let's see how it looks like. Next slide. Here we can see an example of a viewable ad in which 0% of the ad is blocked. Now let's see an example of a non-viewable ad. Here you can see only 25% of the ad is seen, meaning 75% of it is blocked. So it's non-viewable. As mentioned, we need at least 50% of it seen. And these thresholds that I mentioned are just minimums. Keep in mind that in reality, the actual numbers are actually far above the minimal threshold, and that's good to see that publishers, that's a great sign of publishers embracing this new measurement guidelines and making sure not only to meet it, but also to improve their measurement KPIs to be higher. So that's an excellent adaptation from the publishers. Next slide, please. Here, I just want to kind of wrap up the presentation with just an example of how we can measure really multiple ads in real time, at least 5 times a second, based on the MRC requirements and the IAB requirements. So basically, the ability to measure multiple ads in real time, 5 times a second, just a demonstration. And of course, you'll be able to see the full video. The link will be shared, so you can see exactly how it happens in real time. What gives us the capability to really leverage this new ad format and make it scalable. So that's all for the presentation. So thank you a lot, everyone.
Excellent. Thanks, Ben. I appreciate that. And seems like there's some background noise. So for anybody that is on, please mute your phones if you're not speaking. But with that, I'm excited to introduce our panelists for today. So you just heard from Ben Fenster, again, co-founder, chief product officer of Anzu. In addition, we have Zoe Soon from the IAB, Vice President Experience Center, and Kayvon Kavusi from IAS. Kayvon's the Senior Product Manager, Emerging Mediums. So thank you all for being here. And for folks in the audience and on the webinar, if you have questions, which we encourage, please put them into the chat. We are going to be aggregating them all, and we'll try to get to as many as we can at the end of the panel. But so let's get into it. And Ben, again, thank you for the presentation. The guidelines address a number of areas. There was ad viewability, measurement, occlusion. And again, I mentioned that we've got experts from various areas of our industry that I'd love to hear their point of view on. So please introduce yourselves, panelists, and share how these guidelines are impacting your specific areas of scope of work. And Zoe, I see you on my screen, so I'll start with you first.
Great, thanks, Mike. Hi, everyone. Zoe Soon, VP of the Experience Center at IAB. We focus on helping brands future-proof, so looking specifically at emerging advertising marketplaces, gaming being one of those. How the guidelines have impacted my area. Well, I think it's just really been about bringing gaming up to par with the rest of the digital ad ecosystem, and giving gaming a seat at the table. So it's been intended to increase transparency for publishers. I think it's really just helped firm up gaming as the next big marketing channel.
Great, thanks, Anzu. How about you, Kayvon?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Kayvon Kavusi, emerging mediums at IAS. What I cover, gaming is a huge focus area for us, and I think the new guidelines for us at IAS, really come down to how they've given us a lot of room to start developing the technology necessary to expand our existing verification capabilities into this new medium. And we're always looking for the next digital frontier, digital channel to expand our solutions into. But having guidelines like this really help us ensure that what we're building will truly offer value for customers, because we can really hone in on exactly what they need and what they're going to be looking for.
Excellent. And Ben, I know you just gave the presentation, but from what you're seeing early days with these guidelines, how's this impacting Anzu?
So we've been seeing amazing adaptations from the publishers that, as I mentioned, not only adopted the new standard, but actually exceeding it. So we are seeing like higher averages of screen coverage, higher averages of viewable part of the ad. So that's been great. And in Benchmark, we are planning to uncover with measurement partners in the near future. We'll be able to show much more of this adaptation. Also, I think this has been a great thing to really give trust to brand advertisers in this new ad format. So it's standard. You can compare it apple to apple in standard that align with other digital ad formats, like the 1 consecutive second for display and video, the viewable part of the ad, which is almost the same as any other ad, plus adding the new thresholds for determining for in-game. And I think this have made it much easier for brand advertisers to get this new measurement standard.
Right, and I completely agree, Ben. What we've heard in the past is things like bespoke metrics and grading your own homework, and I do think that creating standards does give marketers that trust, right, and be able to enter into this medium with confidence. And obviously, a key reason why is because of our friends at the IAB. And Zoe, a question for you. IAB last released the in-game ad measurement standards back in 2009. Obviously, gameplay has only increased, but also the environments and experiences have changed, right? As Ben showcased, especially those that are going from 2D to 3D environments. So obviously a need for standards. And I know you said this is important to bring gaming as a medium to maturity, but IAB has a lot of topics they can be working on, right? So like, why this one? Why now? Can you just give us a little bit more about kind of what you all felt was the reason why this was the time to really approach these standards?
Yeah, great question. So they hadn't been updated since 2009. And back in 2009, viewability wasn't really a thing in our industry. So gaming was held to a different standard. It wasn't apples to apples. So as I mentioned before, this was really about bringing gaming up to par with the rest of digital media. So as Ben in that great presentation sort of outlined, we re-examined that 10-second cumulative exposure duration. That's a very high benchmark to hold any media to. We defined viewability for these in-game environments and looked at all these 3D and occlusion and sort of all these new use cases that weren't accounted for. So that was the first reason. And secondly, we're just seeing this, this shift to gaming. So the consumer shift to gaming has already happened, obviously, but the tipping point for advertising is on its way. We don't know when that shift is going to happen, but it will tip over. 215 million Americans game. It's 2 out of every 3. That number is 3 billion globally. They spend 13 hours a week gaming. It's like you said, it's not that stereotypical boy in the basement playing. It's 45% of female and 90% of Gen Z game. not only do 90% of Gen Z game, 26% of them say gaming is their favorite activity. So I really think we're laying the groundwork to do more work to sort of prepare ourselves and the industry for this shift to more interactive, immersive experiences.
That's great. And you know, when you mentioned two things like reach and time spent, that usually gets the attention of marketers. So thank you for that, Zoe. Next question, and this is for everyone. I do want to start with Kayvon. I'm very interested in his point of view, but kind of pulling this up higher to a higher level for a moment. Kayvon, if you could you just discuss, you know, in like practical terms, what this does for an advertiser, these new standards, these new guidelines?
Yeah, sure. So, you know, I think we believe at IAS that, you know, these new standards help advertisers kind of determine their benchmarks they need against for their other KPIs, right? You know, so, you know, kind of setting that bar, right, and knowing where it should be. You know, gaming is still a very new space, particularly for larger brands. And most are still trying to figure out how to, like, you know, how to use the channel and how it works. So trying to understand, you know, what type of creative resonates best, what game types drive the most attention, you know, for them, you know, things like that. So having new guidance on how, you know, to leverage this channel is critical for figuring all of that out, right? And so that's kind of, you know, what I think like advertisers are now able to figure out and do moving forward.
What about you, Ben? And again, just trying to make this practical for the folks on the in the audience. What does this mean for advertisers?
So I think that the main thing is the ability to actually analyze the performance, like apple to apple, to have the trust that it's measured properly, and of course, having the ability to do it at scale. It's no more like one-to-one deals or something custom or something that needs to be developed or lots of work creating custom collaterals. It's all standards. It's as easy as buying an ad everywhere for the first time. And not only that, it comes with the full measurements that you can actually, in the end, calculate exactly the amount of reach and the amount of exposure that you got using the same KPIs. And I think this is the big thing that really got advertisers really interested in this new ad format.
You mentioned it doesn't always have to be custom. It could be more at scale for more accessibility, I would say, for marketers to get into gaming as a medium. And I always use the analogy from my television experiences. Yes, we'd love everyone to be a sponsor or integrated into our shows. But at the end of the day, you can also just buy like a commercial unit, right? And get access to the show that way. And I do see a lot of similarities again. Zoe, what about you? From again, on a practical level for advertisers, what does this mean?
I mean, I think it's greater trust and transparency. Being able to compare apples to apples, see how gaming is impacting the amplification on other channels, and a way to sort of champion it internally a bit more, maybe a bit more easily. It's really, I think gaming is undervalued at the moment. So now is a great time to learn your authentic voice and be able to show the results in, you know, KPIs that the rest of your organization understands.
Excellent.
And maybe building on something that you said, that I just want to add one small thing, and I think you touched on an amazing point with the sponsorship versus the ability to just buy the ads. You know, there are so many types of games and genres and platforms and graphics level, and now having the ability to access them all, running the ads, measuring them, getting the data, and then even getting the understanding of where would they want to do something custom and bigger, like when the Marvel placed their weapons in Fortnite, they paid $10 million for this deal. What did they know before placing it in Fortnite specifically? I guess they didn't know a lot before, except like there are a lot of people there. And I think the ability to maybe testing it out on a very large audiences across different devices, different genres, or even within that genre, but many games and many platforms, would have said maybe we need to invest even in another game or in several games and create that custom experience and maybe even more data-driven and effective decision.
I completely agree with you, Ben. It's the ability to start testing in gaming as a advertising channel without having to require 7-figure, 8-figure deals, right? Hopefully that's a gateway to that point, but there are far more lower thresholds for sure to get involved. Ben, so I want to stay with you because in your presentation you mentioned the progress thus far, and look, these new guidelines came about roughly like 6 months ago, but it's not a light switch, right? In terms of making the changes and the updates needed. So in terms of from your vantage point, how do you think the progress has been thus far, as an industry?
So we've been, and again, this is, I guess, more unique to Anzu and our architecture. The way we are built allows us to update our code without updating the games. So we could adapt far quicker, and probably a lot of the measurement partners that we work with can attest to it. We've been very quick in delivering them all the new data that they need to make the different distinctions and measurements. But we are seeing still, I guess, some defragmentation. Like people are still trying, when I talk about other people, but trying to define their own kind of standards. And I think as an industry, it's important that we all, work together, especially, with the IAB and the MRC, and make sure to all align to these standards. And especially at Anzu, this is, of course, 100% across all of our inventory, not only from just telling people this is the standard, but even from the integration when it begins until the end, making sure you're thinking about the ad placement that will reach those thresholds. Think about while QAing the game, making sure you are reaching above the threshold and to even higher levels of viewability, and to make sure they understand the value it gives them. And I think we've been very, very successful at doing that. And I think this is a key for making sure everyone have like this level of high quality inventory that meets the standards, and for advertiser having the peace of mind to spend at scale.
Great. And by the way, I love all the activity that's happening in the chat and Zoe responding to people in real time. It's fantastic. Kayvon, what about from your standpoint, where you're seeing the adoption and the progress happening with these guidelines?
Yeah, so I can speak to that from like the perspective of being working for a verification provider, right? So we did participate in the IAB working sessions last year, with Zoe and Ben on the call and a few others, and kind of getting these standards drafted. And even with that kind of like front row seat, it took a while to incorporate a lot of these things. It's very new and challenging going from a 2D environment to a 3D environment, right? And currently, we're very confident in our ability to measure, with these new parameters, that being, the ad angle, the real estate, occlusions, et cetera. And we know that, our competitors are probably, doing the same, but I think the next step here is just how we go about, moving forward with accreditation here. We have the confidence in this technology, but the accreditation helps, solidify and build that confidence out in the market that the technology works. And, we're looking forward to working with the MRC on this process, right? And we anticipate that, IAS will be one of the first third-party verifiers to receive accreditation for in-game, metrics. So that's kind of what we're looking forward to, and that's where we need to go as a next step, in this space.
That's great. And Zoe, I want to build off of that and ask a question for you. So, accreditation with the MRC, as Kayvon just mentioned, I've heard personally a lot of providers saying that they're compliant, right? But like, what does that actually mean, right? And if you're an advertiser, more importantly, what should you be looking out for? What are the type of questions you should be asking to ensure that these standards and these guidelines are being adopted?
That is a great clarifying question for the audience to hear. So the difference is, if you're compliant, that means you've sort of self-audited, you've implemented it, but no one's really checked your homework. If you're accredited, it means that the MRC has gone through their formal accreditation process, which is very, very thorough and can take a little while. So compliant means, yes, it's good that they've read it and they've graded their own homework, but you really do want to look for that accredited status. So pushing your partners to get accredited, I think, would be a great start, or asking them why they're not. It is a lengthy process, and we relatively recently released the update, so it's acceptable that people haven't yet gotten accredited, but ideally we'd like to see us move towards full adoption and accreditation.
All right, so the audience, you heard it here first. Accreditation is where we want to go. So thank you, Zoe. Back to Kayvon for a moment. I referenced the similarities that I've seen in my career in streaming, and 10 years ago when we were talking about viewability and accreditation, and now we're here with gaming and trying to create gaming as a mature medium, as an advertising channel. How do you think these updates have helped in that goal of making gaming a medium that is ready for prime time? I think that Zoe might have said that we're like, it is at par with everybody else. What do you think, it has been done to help the marketer?
Yeah, so I have two perspectives on this. One is, like, of course, what IAS believes and how it's helped us. The other is the marketer's perspective. To just cover off real quickly from IAS perspective, I think it really helps, and I said this before, it helps us find truly hone in on what we need to be building, right, so that we're providing the most value for the marketer. From the marketer's perspective, I think the updated standards help legitimize the channel by allowing for common measurement analysis across other digital mediums, right? Ben and Zoe both touched on that apples to apples comparison, but without that, like, clients don't necessarily know how to kind of leverage this channel, engage it against the rest of their media buys, right? So this opens up the door for them to start incorporating gaming into their broader media strategies.
I completely agree, and I think that there's definitely work that we can all do as an industry to raise awareness too. I think there's still an awareness problem that these capabilities exist, and to your point that you can measure this through IAS apples to apples across other mediums. Like, that is super important. Just the way you're evaluating an exposure of an impression in one environment, you can do the same with another and truly have a cross medium analysis for yourself. So completely agree. And I think, this is one where I'd love to hear each of your, respective viewpoints on is, so these standards are in place. What else do you think advertisers need in order to make gaming a larger part of their just overall holistic ad planning or ad campaign? What other things? We got these standards, but what else do you think is needed to really, again, at scale, unlock this as an advertising channel? And I'll start with you, Zoe.
Yeah, I'm happy to start. I think this is it's great to have the measurement, but we really can't forget the creative and the experience and why you're doing something. So this is just us sort of like giving people the tools to be able to measure something, but knowing your audience, understanding where they are, why they're there, and having good creatives. So I think there was a question in the chat about creative. You can't just slap a mobile ad into a gaming environment, just like you couldn't slap a desktop ad into mobile. It's a different mindset, different context, different creative environment. And publishers have rightly been reticent to integrate ads because they don't want to break the illusion for the players and jeopardize their subscription revenue. So I think our industry really needs to get creative, right? Designing for the platform and their audience, and with authentic messaging. So I think the gaming platform is probably the least forgiving of missteps in terms of brand voice and why you're there. So yeah, I can't stress enough the creative aspect and knowing your audience.
That's great, and I think that's why the idea, the value proposition of intrinsic in-game advertising and how Anzu works directly with developers, because they know their audiences and they know it is a environment where there should be no disruption to the gameplay itself, right? I think that's why this is a really strong value proposition. Kayvon, what about you from a verification tech standpoint? What do you think still is needed out there?
Well, yeah, aside from echoing what Zoe said, I think that's really important. What I think is missing from a verification and tech standpoint is definitely brand safety. And I think that's next. Viewability and IVT and being able to measure against that and having standards to help, gauge your performance against that are key to legitimizing any channel, right? But what we see, at least at IAS, is brand safety really helps accelerate adoption, right? So, I think that's going to be the next important pillar to tackle here. And then, of course, after that, I think is just ensuring that the technology and the solutions are certified and accredited, against these standards. So kind of, again, focusing on building that trust through accreditation.
So technology, all right, that leads to Ben. So Ben, from an ad tech standpoint, what's the next area of focus? What do you think is needed?
Definitely, and I want to build on what Kevin said, that I think brand safety is definitely a key part, and I think there are a lot of misconceptions around it today. Like I've been hearing someone say, I'm not sure it's brand safe, there is a chat in it, or so most of the games do not actually have chat in them. Like most of the games are not multiplayer games with chat. Just saying that as an example, and I think that there are a lot of things that are a lot more safe than other medias that are just not known. Like the level of checks native content goes through is much higher than web content, even if it's in an app. So news apps or social apps or other apps get their content updated constantly without going in approval from the app store. Each time a new article comes up, it's not like the app store will check it, but each time you update a game, it must go to a reapproval. Of course, I'm not talking like minor things like adding a new skin to the game, but I'm talking about any major change in the game is going to get reviewed again, not only to the game itself, whether it's compliant, but also to the content describing the game. So actually, verified app stores can be a great source for making brand safety happen. And we do see some progress around mobile, but around other premium stores like in PC and in console, we definitely should see some progress there, and it would be very valuable. The second thing, I guess, would be data, leveraging first-party data. All the games have it. So I guess the next big thing is really bring it in, and I believe this will upgrade both measurement, targeting, and attribution to a new level. And we are really excited to see it happening.
Great, and that's going to lead into what is our final question, sadly. But this is a fun one. I always love this question, and I encourage, again, people in the audience to share what they think. But this isn't really a question, it's a prediction. A prediction in the format of a tweet. Let's keep it short, tight. But what is next for gaming? What can we expect? What's a prediction that each of you can make for what we can expect in this medium for the rest of 2023. And Ben, you're still front and center on my screen, so I'll keep it with you.
So I believe we're going to start seeing more. It became more standard, more connected to the entire ecosystem in terms of how we measure all kind of things. If it's viewability, and if it's attention, if it's IVT, and if it's brand safety, and if it's many other categories going to get more and more standardized. And I believe what's going to change is we're going to see a big shift toward freemium from console and PC HD titles that understood this is a much better model than selling discs. And I believe this will bring a wave of premium, high quality inventory that is going to be very exciting to see in the market.
Great. Zoe, prediction. What do you got?
Yeah, I have two predictions. One, sorry, I'm just turning my phone off. One, I think we're going to see more publishers leaning into this space now that there is greater trust and transparency. And Roblox just recently announced launching their ad product. We have Playfronts, our second annual Playfronts coming up, 8th and 9th of March in New York City. Check it out if you're in town and buy side. So we're seeing much more publishers sort of coming to the space as the cost of production comes up and they're looking for other revenue streams and identifiers are going away. So I think we'll see that. And I think dynamic creative will boom, especially with all the advances we're seeing in AI and generative AI. And we're going to see, streaming have more green screens where they can change out ad creative. And then, gaming, once the red-headed stepchild of advertising, will have the chance to lead because we've got these standards, we have these environments where we have dynamic ads inserted. So those are my two predictions.
Yeah, and I love when you say publishers looking for other revenue streams, something that we're seeing in the ad-supported streaming space all of a sudden. So great. And I agree with you. And then last but not least, Kayvon, prediction.
Thank you. So just one big one, and that is I think we're going to see a lot more advertiser, particularly like larger enterprise advertiser interest this year. And in fact, we at IAS are already seeing it. And it's going to be experimental at first. That's kind of how we're viewing it. Kind of trying different things in different areas to see what sticks and what works. But we think that this will all start to lead, as I said before, to a point where gaming becomes more of a larger pillar of our clients' broader marketing strategy.
Great. Well, I think with intrinsic in-game advertising, as I mentioned earlier, it does allow for more accessibility because of the lower threshold to just get involved and get testing in it as a medium, and then potentially growing to those larger figures. But there's definitely an easier way to get involved. But with that, I'd just like to thank Zoe, Ben, Kayvon for a great conversation. Really appreciate all of your insight. And we do have like 10 minutes. So and we have got a bunch of questions. So let's go to the audience questions, and I'll try to direct these or tackle some myself, depending on the content. But okay, this is a good one. And maybe for Ben, I'm going to start with Ben. Will in-game have a place within programmatic? And if so, what further steps are needed to be taken that make it an effective channel for activation?
So good news, everyone. It's already live programmatic. We are selling hundreds of millions of programmatic ads a month already, both display and video within PC, mobile, and now also launching on console. So it's available. Having said that, what I would love to see is seeing advertisers maybe adapt their creatives a bit to be even more effective. So it could be things like If it's a video, keeping it shorter. If it's a display ad, leveraging higher contrast. There are all kinds of things that we saw that can produce even higher levels of attention and effectiveness, even when the ad is on the lower end of viewability. So essentially, you're getting even more exposure free. So all of these optimization kind of remind me the days where, things shifted from web to mobile, and then you have all kinds of tweaks and optimization to make it even more effective. Although it's very similar technologies, but there was a big difference in companies that leverage those big differences. And I think there are a lot of opportunities for advertisers, especially programmatic buyers, to leverage in this case. I can tell you that we are now also, to help this move forward, we're now even moving towards sending all the viewability data in the extension of the programmatic bid request. So it's going to be even more transparent and more easy to optimize and identify how to buy the higher quality inventory.
And I'll just add on that from a programmatic standpoint, as Ben just mentioned, it's here, it's now, and with Anzu having integrations with major DSPs like the Trade Desk, like Yahoo, like Xandr, that ability to start activating programmatically exists right now. So don't let that be a deterrent or something that you feel you have to wait for. Ooh, here's a good one. And I think Zoe just mentioned roadblocks. So maybe I'm going to throw this one to her. But how are these capabilities balanced with COPPA compliance?
So that's a tough question. Thank you for throwing
Sorry.
There are great vendors in the space who are looking at this. So Super Awesome is one of them. So the question was, how are these capabilities balanced with COPPA? So right now, like I mentioned, this was just to bring viewability to gaming, have the metrics sort of on par with what everyone else is measuring in terms of impressions, reach, frequency, and engagement. It's not really. Are they asking about the in-game guidelines?
I think just basically, how COPPA compliance fits within these capabilities. Does it, or is that kind of next on the agenda?
Right now there's a lot of manual user testing that's happening to make sure that things aren't breaking the game. I think that's probably, and I can see Ben nodding, that's probably the first thing that we have to get right. So I don't really see this as an issue because right now it's such a high touch to make sure that the quality is there.
I guess go on, Kevin.
Just a thought on the COPPA piece, because we've at IAS have seen that in other channels. I think that this comes down to really, the brand safety, brand suitability capabilities that we aim to build out, and we are aiming to solve for in other channels such as, YouTube, for example. But the way we kind of attack it is how do we help advertisers navigate, and kind of identify the right content and the wrong content. And I think that's kind of the approach, we should be taking to avoid this, because outside of the ratings themselves for the games, that's how a marketer is going to make sure that they can effectively navigate these waters. So
that's actually a great point. And I think this is very unique to gaming in comparison to other types of content that, there is app stores with verified content that gives you age rating based on government standard like ESRB and PEGI rating. So you also even get the right rating per region. So I guess I think it's easier to navigate than other areas where you just don't have it. When you're going to open some social app or a news app or something else that some content pops up, and knowing whether it is a kids, like an article for about something related to kids or not, is going to be much harder than just having a place that were tested, verified, and easily extractable via API. So it's actually very easy to understand the game ratings today and understand where do you want to advertise. And specifically in Roblox, I think they did an amazing job to make their platform COPPA proof. Developers literally can't even make a mistake because they don't even have access to the user IP. They only have access to very limited fields of data. So actually Roblox did an amazing job. They moderate every piece of content that go through is moderated with very clear moderation guidelines. So actually they did amazing work I think in terms of getting copyright, they are definitely in the leading edge of it in terms of gaming and COPPA. But they've been doing this for 10 years, so I guess
Yeah,
this has been part of it.
well, and I find it interesting that still that's always where kind of our mind goes, because like as the father of a 10-year-old, like that's the audience I see playing video games. But we have this such a large cohort in the US of the casual gamer, which again, Zoe mentioned 46% of all US, people playing video games are women, high household income, educated women. That is the growing portion of the gameplay. So that's really, the audience opportunity. And again, as I continue to like pull people back, like there's diversity of audience within people playing video games, and it's not just the stereotype that we automatically always go to. All right, we're almost at time. Last question. And I feel like we've done a good job answering this, especially Zoe calling out, having the right creative. But how can we ensure that in-game ads do not break the experience for a player? Having it the right context in the right game. Ben, I'll ask you that one.
So actually, we've been taking several ways on how to make sure this happens. For once, we have a game producer in our team that reviews integrations. So we help the developers to understand. First, we give them best practices, and we give them good examples on how to do it. And of course, many of the games actually already have areas that used to have like fake ads. Just a funny thing, it's like something that we told Activision Call of Duty team, like, you are actually the biggest digital out-of-home company in the world, you just don't know it. You have more billboards than any digital out-of-home company in the world with more exposure and more data. Just saying it out there loudly because it is true. Just taking those billboards with fake content, just replacing them with real one, not only will not break the immersion, but will actually make the game a bit better. If I'm from the US and I'm seeing a Best Buy shop, or if I'm from the UK, I'm seeing a Tesco, I feel just 0.5%, little more personalized, better in my environment rather than seeing something not in my language and not something that I know. So I think we actually have a great opportunity here to make the content a little bit better. And you know what? I don't know any other ad format that even gives you the opportunity to improve the content. Even I won't claim it makes it 10 times better, but even a little bit better. And I think this what really attracted me to intrinsic in-game when starting Anzu. So as both as a gamer and someone familiar with advertising.
Good creative can make the game play even that much better. All right, let's end on that. Again, Zoe, Kayvon, Ben, thank you all so much. Thank you to the Anzu team for hosting this webinar and for our audience. And I believe there's going to be a recording.
Mike.
Have a great rest of the day and rest of the week. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Appreciate it. Thank you.